Hello and welcome to the Brave Hearts, Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. I'm Lee Hatcher. Thanks for joining me as we explore a whole world of ideas and inspiration as we seek to help the boys of today grow into the fine young men of tomorrow. Each week, I'll be interviewing an educator from the Scots College in Sydney to find out how best to build a boy, to offer all parents of school-age boys practical ideas and strategies to shape the character of a young man for life and for good. So, let's ring the bell and meet our guest for this week's podcast. With me today is Dr. John Montgomery. John is Head of Curriculum, Years 7 to 12 at the Scots College, and his topic is Boys Need Minds Guided by Hearts. John, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Good to be here.
Great to meet you. Let's begin, John, with the role of teachers and parents. You could think, especially as a teacher, my job is to just ram facts, formulas and information into these boys. You don't think that's good enough?
Absolutely not good enough. And actually, I like that you've introduced this with the partnership between home and school,
yes,
between parents and teachers,
yes,
because it is a partnership, and as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a boy,
yeah,
and it certainly does. And I think we can very easily, in the modern world, think about how do we capacity build and make boys able to do certain things, understand things well, and forget about it's not just what they can do, it's about how they go about doing that. And I would say equally, or perhaps even more importantly, we're not just about building capacity, we're about building character. Those values and virtues which make them live a good life, not just make a living.
You believe that it is possible to blend head, which we're talking about, but also heart when you're building a boy into a man.
Absolutely. I think that intersection between the two, it's not really a division. Whenever you go into a life vocation of any sort, you choose that out of passions as well as abilities.
Yes.
So it's not just about what am I good at, it's what do I love to do, and putting those two things together is absolutely vital. All of us want to be living our lives and spending our time doing things that we're passionate about and things that we know are making a constructive and positive difference to the world we live in, not just bringing home a paycheck at the end of the week.
So when you talk about hearts, you're talking about passion?
Passion, and also I think a disposition for life, so that there are values and attitudes. So it's just not about the things that I love to do. The significant importance is how do I feel about myself as I employ myself into that as well? Am I living a life that I feel is honourable?
Yeah. The three domains, actually, and values we're exploring in our podcasts, to learn, to lead and to serve, they all actually combine or can combine heads with hearts.
Absolutely. So when those are the three driving factors at the Scots College that we want our boys to be able to, as graduates, to take those three things and apply them into a life well lived. So yes, it is about learning, but it's what you do with that learning, and they combine with leading and serving. And it's not by accident that we have a mission to do that that's come from the Presbyterian values of the heritage of the Scots College, and with Christ as a lived example of how to do that really, really well. He certainly showed us how leadership and service were almost synonymous, that it was a life that was committed to doing what that could be done to make the world a better place.
How did he do that? So he taught it, but how did he do it as well?
Now that's the big question.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not just about showing or telling this is what's right. You have to know what's right, but you have to love to do what's right as well. And imbuing that passion to love it is complex, and it doesn't happen through a curriculum per se. It happens by the tribe, the community, of pulling on that rope together and not always getting it right. And in fact, I think sometimes getting it wrong, and the messiness of getting it wrong, is where sometimes the most powerful learning happens.
You're right.
It's an opportunity for grace to be experienced and to be offered, for mistakes to be recovered from, and to be seen that it's not the end of the story, it's a learning opportunity that gives me another opportunity to do better next time.
To quote some of Jesus' words, it's about loving one another.
That's the whole point of it. And great words, but that's the hard thing to do when you don't feel like loving one another, because you're feeling hurt or
Yes.
broken in some way that makes it very, very difficult. But it doesn't make it not true. And when you experience it over time, you not only know what is the right thing to do, you love to do that because you see the healing and the help and the health of yourself and others that grows out of that.
Great stuff. John, there's a common thought in the public square today that facts, figures, job skills, information, they are the things that counts. They're the things that we can only talk about. And we can talk about those things confidently. Yet, matters of the heart, even the spiritual, are relegated to the purely personal. Is that a good way forward for our society?
It's a popular way forward.
Yes, it is.
One of the ways that you see this expressed currently in the popular discourse is the emphasis, not only in this nation but across the OECD countries, is pushing education for STEM. Science, technology and engineering, mathematics needs to be the focus. And some are calling for a little bit of a modification to that, to the STEAM curriculum, with arts kind of wedged in between the hard sciences to be kind of the...
Especially here, actually.
That's right, yeah. That's all a very good thing. It's not to say that those things aren't of value, but I think by placing our hope in the utility of those things to create a better world for us to create together is not going to do the job for us.
No.
We have to have, and I think it goes back to what we were saying right at the very, very start, we have to have people who know and love how to live well and what is right, and not just being people of great capacity. So this intersection between how I live my life and what I do in my life and what am I capable of and where's my confidence at rest, those things need to be more fully and thoroughly integrated in the educational experiences of boys and girls. And this happens in school, but it happens beyond school as well. And this is why being a community that values this and has a deep desire to see the flourishing that happens not just in the head but in the heart of our young people is so, so important. The world depends on us getting this right.
Yes, there's a great deal of emphasis, a push for specialisation in education.
Yes.
Very careers focused.
Yes.
Very head based.
Yes.
You can understand it to an extent.
Yes, well, I mean, there's money to be made, and
Yes.
and I can remember hearing at a graduation speech one time when my wife graduated from university, and the guest speaker was talking about the increasing in specialisation, particularly in the medical field, and how someone was proudly saying they were going to be not only an ears, nose, and throat specialist, but they're going to be just a nose specialist. And he was wondering which nostril you're going to be left or. So I think this idea that we have to become so focused on the hard sciences and the specialisation to a point that we forget what it means to live is missing the whole point of being alive. It's not just life is much more complex but excitingly messy.
I'm a human.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd argue, actually, in most careers, you can combine head with heart. Often you'll do best if you're able to do that. Best for yourself and best for our world.
That's exactly right. So you want scientists who enjoy the wonder of the paradox. You want people in the areas of influence in all realms of society who have a heart of compassion and empathy, who what's driving them forward is not the economic drivers. How can I get the bottom line further into the black or whatever it might be? What's driving us is what's going to be the longer outcome for the greatest good.
Here's an important question, though. At what some might appear to think is a high-achieving, robust school like the Scots College, is it not too soft or wet to consider matters of the heart with these boys?
Well, I'd argue rather passionately that to be someone that cares about character and matters of the heart takes, excuse the French, a damn lot of courage.
It does too.
It does. And so it's very easy, I think, to relegate that to not be prepared to be talked about and to be worked on and to be valued and to be a bit, blokey about just matters of how many marks am I getting in my test or if I made, the first 15 right yet. But I know that these young lads care a lot about character, about who they are as young men, and are encouraging each other to stand strong in the face of popularism when there is a tide of opinion saying, go this way, and to be able to stand up against that tide and say, actually, no, I'm not going to bend to that popular idea. I'm going to stand up for what I believe is right. That takes courage. It's not wet.
You do. No. You do see that. So do you think boys are more up for that?
Absolutely.
In this age?
And I think particularly under Dr. Lambert's leadership at the college, we've seen in recent times where the full expression of what it means to be a fine young man of honour and integrity has really been brought to the fore. And you see boys here really honouring those values more and more so, wanting to be men who stand against misogyny, who stand against the victimisation of minorities, that really want to be men of honour, that stand when it's difficult to stand.
We always love being practical in our podcast. So if it's truly good to know what is good, and perhaps more importantly, as you said, to love it, how practically is that going to be achieved? What's it going to look like? What's it going to do to nurture that, John?
I think we've got to make lots of mistakes.
Good point.
I think it's not about getting it right and being nervous about, am I imparting the wisdom that needs to be imparted perfectly at this case. I think it's about that messiness of being courageous enough to have a go at getting it wrong and looking actually out for those opportunities when crisis hits, because I think that's when the most powerful learning actually happens.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can write a curriculum to teach valuing of what's good and right, but I think we can jump into the ocean and storm together, and through our attempts together and holding up solid examples like the life of Christ as a touchstone for knowing, where is true wisdom, where's a life well lived, what's a model of that, and attempting side by side to navigate, the ups and downs of a very full and busy life that life in the 21st century has become.
An important part of doing that is about empowerment, about taking the risks of the mess of life. Empowerment for a boy,
Yep.
teacher, a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that freedom or safety, I guess, that I don't have to be perfect or get it right every single time to be valued and honoured. I think there's been, I've certainly seen it in my life, a kind of a popular view that in education and schooling or teenage years at least, girls are good and boys are bad. Girls tend to be tidy and get everything, and boys tend to be not. But I think boys need to hear particularly that message that boys are full of energy,
Sure.
full of fun, and full of brave courage to have a go. And they just need others to stand beside them and support them in that, and to say, it doesn't matter if you don't get it right. It doesn't matter if you fell over. It doesn't matter if you've messed up there. What matters is what you do next.
Here's a big question. Why do you think the best lessons of life are often found in the mess of life? I've actually experienced it. I agree. I've seen it. But why is that?
I think until that's a visceral experience. It hits you not just in your head. And this goes back to what we're talking about, hearts and minds. This hits you in who you are as a person when you hit a crisis. And that's when you're most ready to be open to a different way of shifting your paradigm, of thinking, and that obviously is not working for me. What can I do to try and make it a better attempt next time? And if we sail through life and we don't get those opportunities, we don't grow, we don't learn. And growth is almost always painful, but it's always worthwhile.
Takes courage.
Takes courage. And a boldness to get up and dust yourself off and have another go when it doesn't work out.
What would your takeout be, John, finally, and your advice to parents on all of this? How are they going to make this happen for their boys at home?
This is really important because I think one of the things about being a parent is when our little ones arrive, they don't arrive with a manual of how to.
If only they did. There's the baby. Oh, there's the manual
right.
too. Yes.
Yeah, we might get a couple of lessons in antenatal classes, but that doesn't really set you up too well for the teenage years. So, look, I've got 4 children who are now heading into their adult life and have been in education for quite a while. And I think we have to realise that our children are like a box of chocolates. If you have more than 3 or 4 kids, you know that for an absolute fact. You think, where did these kids come from? They're nothing like each other.
That's right.
But we have to not impose upon them what are our passions and strengths. We need to discover what their passions and strengths are and fan that flame.
Wise.
So it's about getting to know, but it's not just about knowing what their strengths are. You've got to feed that. You've got to encourage that. You've got to find little niches in their world where they can play and revel in their strengths. And praise and encouragement comes before success. So as parents, we need to know that, nurture that, feed that, and help them to find niches in their life where they can operate in their strengths and passions, their heads and their hearts, where they're really at, and then say, okay, well, that's you. I love you. And let's go play together in the spaces that you're good at and that you love.
What a wonderful way to end a very thought-provoking conversation. Dr. John Montgomery, thanks so much indeed for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here, Lee.
If you'd like more information about growing your boy into a fine young man, you can subscribe to receive really useful articles and news from the Scots College. It's free, offered to every parent who wants the very best for their boy in their journey to manhood. In your internet search engine, enter the Scots College e-newsletter to subscribe. I'm Lee Hatcher. Hope you'll join me again next week on the Brave Hearts, Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. Now, when John walked in here, he looked curiously at this button on the desk. That's the bell, John. Will you please ring us out?
I'd love to, Lee. Just as I'm ringing the bell,
Yeah.
there is a resource that parents might find very useful.
Yeah, good.
Lee Walters is looking at strength-based parenting, and she has a 5-week online course that parents can do that talk to some of these things. It's easy to find at www.strengthswitch.com. If you want to go have a look and sign up for it, you won't regret it. But
Strength Switch.
strengthswitch.com.
Okay,
Great.
Hit that bell.
Here we go.